best decisions of my life. In a place where hope and purpose changed my life. And it continues to impact thousands of people like me every single day. It's amazing what renewed values and purpose can do to change the trajectory of a person's life. Prison Fellowship is committed to partnering with departments of corrections. Continues to impact thousands of people like me every single day. It's amazing what renewed values and purpose can do to change the trajectory of a person's life. Prison Fellowship is committed to partnering with departments continues to impact thousands of people like me every single day. It's amazing what renewed values and purpose can do to change the trajectory of a person's life. Prison Fellowship is committed to
Morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'm in California today. There's only one story today, and we're going to open up the phones. I'll try and get a call screener installed here on my computer in the remote studio. I'll be in California for a couple of days, and you know what that story is. Wall Street Journal, an 18-year-old man opened fire in an elementary school, Robb School, in Uvalde, Texas yesterday. At least 19 children and 2 adults were murdered before he himself was killed. Border Patrol agent acted without waiting for backup. One was shot, another, maybe a second was shot as well. It's still unclear. But one of the Border Patrol agents engaged and killed the killer. It is, of course, the worst shooting and the most horrific since Sandy Hook in Newtown, Connecticut in 2012, and where 20 children were dead, the same ages, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. 6 years later, 17 people killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And so it's that horrific. I don't have to play for the president again. I'll play a couple of clips, but mostly I'd like to hear what you have to say. We do know about the killer this morning. He was allegedly bullied over a childhood speech impediment, suffered from a fraught home life, and lashed out violently against peers and strangers recently and over the years, according to the Washington Post. Red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. Using weapons purchased this month, days after his 18th birthday, 2 assault rifles, according to the characterization in Reuters. Doesn't tell us what the make or model is. The killer shot and critically wounded his grandmother. Then he went on a shooting rampage at Robb Elementary School. They found one old acquaintance of his, a fellow by the name of Santos Valdez, who has known Ramos since early elementary school. They were friends, he said, until his behavior started to deteriorate. They used to play video games such as Fortnite, Call of Duty. Then he changed. Ramos pulled up to a park once. They often played basketball, had cuts all over his face. He first said a cat had scratched his face. Then he told me he cut himself with knives over and over again. And Valdez says, "You're crazy, bro. Why would you do that?" Ramos said he did it for fun. In middle and junior high, he was bullied for having a stutter and a strong lisp. Stephen Garcia, who considered himself Ramos's best friend in 8th grade, said Ramos didn't have it easy in school. He'd get bullied hard, like bullied by a lot of people over like social media, over gaming, over everything. He was the nicest kid, the most shy kid. He just needed to break out of his shell. One time he posted a photo of himself wearing black eyeliner. which brought on a slew of comments using a derogatory term for gay person. Garcia said he tried to stand up for him, but when Garcia and his mother relocated to another part of Texas for her job, he just started being a different person. He kept getting worse and worse. I don't even know. When Garcia left, Ramos dropped out of school. He started wearing all black, large military boots, grew out his hair long. He missed long periods of high school. Classmates said, not on track to graduate. If you're following my Twitter account, last night I posted an excerpt from the New York Times interview of a person around Uvalde said, this town is so small, everybody knows everybody. I knew this kid, saw him around town. There are these stop order laws. Doug Ducey, after Parkland, the governor of Arizona, did a deep dive into what we need to do about the problem of school shootings. And the most efficacious thing about school shootings, wouldn't do anything in Buffalo, although a red flag law is in effect in New York, and it failed in the Buffalo killer, is a red flag, a stop order, severe threat order of protection, where parents, loved ones, teachers get to throw a flag, and that goes into the background check. I assume this killer passed a background check on his 18th birthday, but he ought not to have been able to pass that background check because he's got a disturbed history and a propensity to violence and every red flag you could possibly want. My phone number is 1-800-520-1234. Also noted on Twitter last night, I just went briefly, did a little bit of a look into, okay, what do we spend on TSA? What do we get for what we spend on TSA? TSA spends $7.68 billion annually. They employ 47,000 people. I just use that as a baseline. It's probably way too high, but so I want to be conservative. There are 131,000 K through 12 schools in the United States, 131,000. If you put 2 armed officers, highly trained armed officers, at every one of those schools, it would cost about $45 billion annually. Now, $45 billion is a lot of money. That would be block granted to states to allow them to run their programs. They would probably supplement police departments with 2 armed officers. And TSA, by the way, they're around the clock at airports. So $45 billion is more than enough to do 2 armed officers every day during school. And I mean highly trained armed officers, because this is so heartbreaking and so awful that's the answer. Stop orders, and it doesn't stop all violence, doesn't stop Chicago gangland killings, isn't going to stop the supermarket shooter because the red flag law didn't fail there, but it's emotionally disturbed young men. And that's where our school, and they can get guns in America because America has a Second Amendment, you can get guns. And we're not going to stop that. And I got lots of audio here. You've already heard the president. I think people most watched the president last night. Here's Chris Murphy on the Senate floor as we screen calls, 1-800-520-1234. Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, who's been emotionally and deeply involved since the Newton shootings, cut number 14.
Every ounce of love and thoughts and prayers we can send, we are sending. But I'm here on this floor to beg, to literally get down on my hands and knees and beg my colleagues. Find a path forward here. Work with us to find a way to pass laws that make this less likely.
Now, Chris Murphy is he's a fine man, been on the show before. I don't know what can stop this other than state red flag laws. I mean, and a federal mandate doesn't bother me for a red flag law, and severe threat orders of protection. I went over and got briefed by Doug Ducey. When he was done, he convened teachers, educators, police officers, gun violence experts, mental health experts. We know who these killers are. Not all mentally disturbed people are killers. My brother had a friend in Warren, Ohio, who developed adult schizophrenia, and he walked all over town, and everybody knew him, and everyone chatted with him a little bit, but he talked to himself, and he had pretty advanced schizophrenia. It was not a threat to anyone. It's at this age, and they shouldn't be, and the red flag law would apply to him. And I don't think the Second Amendment applies because it's strict scrutiny. even if it's strict scrutiny, and that's not been articulated by the court, a narrowly drawn, as narrowly as necessarily drawn law would pass muster. Now, Reince, my friend Reince Priebus on Hannity last night, has a different point of view. Cut number 17.
If we as a country want to protect these kids, we can do it. It's a horrible day. It's a sad day. We just gave away $7 trillion over the last couple years in this country. Much of it very important and necessary, a lot of it so that people could just stay home and not work. We could take the hundreds of billions of dollars that you and Tammy just outlined, harden these schools, put police officers, retired police officers, skilled people, resource officers in these schools, and protect these kids. There's no doubt that if we wanted to make sure that there was someone ready and willing to defend these kids in these schools, we could do it. But I think that we also have to remember that we can't eradicate evil through legislation.
And Reince
the
is right
answer
about
to our
that,
problems
but it just seems to me the obvious answer. Now, as we screen calls, let me do the market report and remind you, Relief Factor is a great sponsor of this show. I'm not going to be doing my Relief Factor ad today when I begin these calls. It's a fraught day. I don't think there's any American who doesn't. I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old grandchild and 2 new babies born on Friday and one who's preschool. There isn't anyone in America who doesn't react the same way. I watched Steve Kerr get angry. Steve Kerr's father was murdered. I understand a lot of people are fragile over this issue and speak their emotion into any moment. I have been saying the same thing for years, raging against guns. There's 110 guns for every 100 Americans. You're not going to get rid of guns. You can protect schools. You can do your best to make sure that deeply disturbed people don't get guns, and you can call me at 1-800-520-1234. I'll be right back, America. Dark, dark morning. I'm Hugh Hewitt from California today. Stay tuned.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, broadcasting for the next couple of days from California. My number is 1-800-520-1234. I'm taking calls on the massacre of 19 children, 2 teachers, by a killer who was shot and killed by border policemen. Border Patrol is not assigned that high school. They responded to that elementary school. They responded quickly. That's why I think we need officers with guns at every school. Randy in Columbus, it's a 30-second rule this morning. Randy, go ahead. Hello, Randy.
Hello?
Yep, you're on.
Yes, sir. Hey, I support your show and everything. Well, what's this guy's first name?
I'm not doing his name.
Yeah, because he's foreign. He's
not. Stop. He's not. He's born in America. Thanks, Randy. He's not foreign. He is not foreign. He's been in the United States forever. He's a mentally disturbed 19-year-old. Candace, Riverside. How are you, Candace?
Morning, Hugh.
Good morning. You're up early.
I'm on my way home from work.
No? Okay, you did the late shift. So, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering when people are going to put 2 and 2 together and realize that these are people that have mental health issues, and a lot of them, well, actually most of them that have been involved in these mass shootings have been on some kind of pharmaceutical medication, antipsychotic or
well, we don't know about that about him, but he's clearly disturbed. I don't know that I would do a red flag for everyone who's on any medication, but I think there might be an argument. I'd have to talk to a doctor, and again, that's why Ducey did this great.
I don't think everyone, but if you go research these people that have been involved in these mass shootings, Sandy Hook, the Las Vegas shooter, the gentleman that shot up the movie theater, all of these have been on some kind of drug like that.
Okay, it's quite possible that you're right, and the elements of a red flag law or a stop order law can be debated by experts, but you're in favor of that.
Oh yes, they need to look into that.
Thank you, Candace. Lawton in Atlanta, Georgia. Yesterday, Brian Kemp easily won renomination, pushing back the Donald Trump back David Perdue. Brian Rasberger, the Secretary of State, won nomination, pushing back a challenge sponsored by Donald Trump. There's a runoff in Alabama, and and we don't know who won the congressional race in Texas. That's the quick rundown on that. Lawton, go ahead.
Yeah, my people won. Hugh, Sebastian Younger wrote a book called Tribe, and in it he said there wasn't a mass shooting for 2 years after 9/11 because the country came together. And we have to come up with some kind of change. We have to do something, even if it doesn't work at every instance. I think we need a federal red flag law, and I think the tumultuous years of 18 to 25, these ages, they don't need a high-capacity firearm for any reason. If the gun rights people push back, let them buy a revolver with 6 in it, but not with carrying a magazine of 11 or 17 that they can quick load, every 20 seconds.
Lawton, you could persuade me on that. If the federal law was narrowly drawn, and it might be, it's certainly 18 to 22, and it limited high magazine capacity so that deer hunters and shotguns and revolvers were available to those kids because they're American citizens. It's like driver's license, like everything else. But that might be, I don't know if that would withstand a Heller review. It might. But you're conservative, I gather. Are you, Lawton?
I am, and I am a gun owner.
Yeah, okay. I'm not.
A kid doesn't need an AR to hunt with. Let me tell you, they just need a deer rifle with it. I mean, that's ridiculous. They need a 31 rounds to kill a deer, and they better quit hunting.
Lawton, thank you. I love to hear from conservatives like that. I don't think this is actually a debatable issue, but don't go too far, Congress. Don't go too far. Just do the funding for schools. Roger in Denver. Go ahead, and Dover. Hey, Roger.
That was Robert.
Robert, okay.
Yeah, I was, there was an article I read some time ago. It was one of these other school shootings that had taken place. There was a congressman talking about the Israeli school model, and, they don't have what we think of as, those resource officers in school who are like officers /
No, they got armed. They got armed people everywhere in Israel. I've been there. The Israeli model makes sense to me as well because Buffalo, you can't America is rife with violence. It always has been. It is our resting state. You can't stop that, but you can put guards who are armed and trained. There aren't enough former special forces people around, but I wouldn't be opposed to hiring all of them for schools. Don't go anywhere, America. Lots more phone calls today. 1-800-520-1234. Connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'm going to get back to your phone calls in a moment. I do want to do a market report brought to you by Birch Gold. Every day, Birch Gold wants people to know, and gold was $18.58 an ounce this morning, steady as the market had another bad day yesterday. You can find gold at hughgold.com. You can also just text my name, Hugh, to 989898. Another down day. It could be another down week. Overseas, things are up a little bit, but I think that the Fed is searching for an interest rate that will cap sky-high price growth. Home sales are showing the first signs of cooling off. The prices aren't dropping. The interest rates are going up. That slows down the ability of people to buy homes. The inflation is not going to be stopped until they do about 3, 4, 5 rounds of half-point price rises. And even then, it's a wing and a prayer. Biden should not have spent, the president should not have spent $4 trillion last year, and that has sent the economy into a tailspin, combined with additional upheavals from Russia invading Ukraine, China locking down Shanghai, There's some leaks out of China today I would normally be covering. I would normally be covering the price of gas. I normally cover all the news, but today I'm covering the shooting, and we're loading up the board with more phone calls. 30-second rules in effect at 1-800-520-1234. I do want to remind everyone, take your relief factor. I brought it with me. I'm not taking it this early in the morning because it won't work for the rest of the day. I got a lot of work to do today, a couple of speeches and addresses, so I'll take it when I wake up from the nap after I do the show, when I'm in California at 3 to 6 in the morning. Sometime between then. It's too early to take relief factor. I take it in the morning. And so I will adjust my body clock accordingly, get my relief factor done. You can get relief factor at relieffactor.com. $19.95 gives you a 3-week starter pack. It does indeed work. And Birch Gold, which does indeed diversify and secure your IRA or 401k. Just buy the Eagles, the Maple Leaves, the Krugerrands. Don't buy Numanistics. 5 to 10% of your retirement there. The Birch Gold is a specialist in IRA rollovers and setting up an IRA so that a portion of your retirement is always secured by precious metals. At hughgold.com, or text Hugh to 989898. Yoni is in Virginia. Hi, Yoni.
How you doing, Hugh?
Good. What is this Israeli system that the guy called about? Isn't it just that there's lots of people with a lot of trained people with a lot of weapons in Israel to shoot terrorists dead when they show up?
Well, first of all, we got a lot of people with a lot of guns. But in addition to that, the last mass school shooting in Israel happened May 15th, 1974, when you were trying to figure out who to take to the prom. Okay? I mean, seriously, that's how long ago it was. It resulted in 31 dead Israelis, 70 wounded at a school. As a result of that shooting, a couple of things happened. Number one, we created what is today the National Counterterror Unit, Yamam, part of the Border Police. And secondly, we put at every school armed personnel. All we have to do in America to end this, we don't need to violate people's constitutional rights by restricting magazine capacities or outlawing guns. We need to put at every school armed officers, armed not just with handguns, but with AR-15s, because allegedly this guy yesterday, hasn't been confirmed yet, was engaged with law enforcement in a gunfight before he went into the school, and he was wearing soft body armor. Soft body armor defeats pistol rounds. Rifle rounds will go through it like a hot knife through warm butter. So you arm your guys and gals with AR-15s and pistols. You put them at schools, and we will end this, and it'll be something that goes into our history books, because that's what happened in Israel. And the difference is here we have mental people doing it that have mental issues, and in Israel we've got the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine and the Islamic Jihad and Hamas, and there's a reason they haven't done this. It's not because all of a sudden they love Jews. It's because they know it's a zero-sum game. They're not even going to get in the front door. They're going to be gunned down before they hit the front door. So for 48 years, we haven't had a mass casualty event at a school.
Every school in Israel has this.
Absolutely. My children's school, my children went to school in Judea, in the southern part of Israel. Their closest neighbors to the school was a Palestinian town that's notorious for terrorism. And on the roof of their school was a sandbagged and placed belt-fed machine gun. Do we need that at our schools in America? Of course not. But you know what? They had it at my kids' school, plus a bunch of guys armed with M16 rifles and pistols, and we never had a single incident at the school. And there's a way to stop this.
When was, and Yoni, I want to get to a lot of people, when was the last terrorist attack on a school in Israel?
Of consequence? I mean, there was one, if I remember right, a mental guy that was near a school. I'm not counting that because he didn't even hit the school. The last one of any consequence was at Ma'alot in northern Israel, and that was on May 15th, 1974. 31 dead Israelis, 70 wounded Israelis, and we put an end to it because why? Because we know that good people with guns stop bad people with guns.
Yoni, thank you. Eloquent. I appreciate it. Brian in South Dakota. Brian?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to comment. From personal experiences growing up, I'm 52 now, but, you know, back in grade school, high school, kids can be so cruel. I'm not, of course, sticking up for any of the shooters, but people miss when kids are bullied. And you know, I grew up, I had ADHD, I had learning disabilities, I was in special ed classes, I failed third grade, so I was behind. You know, a lot of things led to being bullied and out just being an outcast. I didn't fit in anywhere. I wasn't a cool kid, I wasn't, you know, the greasers or whatever. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I sat back and I just resented everybody. And built into a hatred where all I wanted to do is revenge, you know. Of course, thankfully, back then I was able, I don't know, somehow sort it out. But, you know, these kids, you notice that a lot of them, they dress weird or they...
Oh, this kid is... How anyone sold him a gun is beyond me, given what we know about him already. It is simply beyond me, and I don't think anyone in America ought to have a problem with saying, no, you can't have a gun when you're this messed up.
Right.
And I don't blame him for being messed up. I blame him for shooting and killing people. I also blame people who are overreacting and missing the obvious thing that you and Yoni and others are saying. And Brian, I'm glad you obviously grew up and grew out of it and got over it. But you're right, kids are cruel. And anyone who ever saw
bullies, you know,
if you ever want to watch a movie about bully, there's a movie called Bully, and it's about a school bus. They filmed school buses in, I think it was New York City, for 2 years, and the stuff that went on to the weakest. It's always like the what's that? It's not the novel about kids on an island. It'll Lord of the Flies. It's Lord of the Flies every day in America in every school at some degree. But, you know, not, this is 1 in a million kids, right? But we got to make sure they don't get guns. Brian, thank you. Tammy in Ohio.
Hi, Hugh.
Hey, Tammy.
I just want to say I'm a school resource officer in one of the biggest districts in my county, and we only have 2 SROs right now, school resource officers. And I've seen the mental health of these kids go down due to COVID, being locked in their house for 2 years. You know, I'm armed. I have a rifle locked in my office, and we've taken guns off middle school kids. And it all comes down to the city and the school districts have to work together to want to come up with the money to put officers in the schools. And we have a great relationship with our school board, so we have no problems with putting SROs in our schools. And
how many are you're at school, Tammy?
My middle school is 7th and 8th graders. We have 964 students.
And are you the only SRO there?
Yes, sir. I'm the only SRO, and our high school is about 2,200 kids, I believe, up to 2,200 kids.
You see,
and that's not counting the 5 elementaries that I take care of.
Well, how in the world you can't possibly do all that? I mean, SROs are great if you're armed and a rifle in the office. I don't know what that's gonna. It's gonna maybe help you if you get a warning, but like Yoni just said, are you carrying a pistol at all times?
I carry a to my hand. I'm an automatic handgun. Yes, sir, I do.
Are you good at it?
I'm not too. I'm pretty good. Yeah. So, I think I am.
You know, the SRO failed at Parkland.
Yes, big time.
Big time.
That still sickens me personally and professionally. So, you know, and we're being taught now. God be with these families and first responders that had to go into that school yesterday and see all that, and it's going to affect them the rest of their life, all of them. And you know, we're taught now that we don't stop and help victims. We got to get to the threat.
Good for you.
We got to stop that threat.
Tammy, God bless you. If that ever comes, should hatred and evil come your way, Godspeed to you. Thank you. Grant, Bakersfield, California. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, good morning, Hugh.
Good morning.
Listen to your show every morning. I'm at work.
Oh, thank you. You're working late, early, whatever it is.
Yeah. You know, a lot of issues. I've been listening to all the people. They're right on the spot. I agree with you that we should have 2 officers in every school, and $45 billion is nothing compared to saving the lives of all these bullied kids.
Well, the kids who were murdered, the little ones, the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds who were murdered yesterday, and those who saw it, and their 2 teachers and the Border Patrol. I'm not sure. We'll get more details. Didn't have to die if after Sandy Hook we had done this, but
it could have been avoided. We could. What opposing the metal detectors to stopping guns coming?
Well, you know, I don't know that metal detectors. It's like TSA. When I go through TSA, I traveled yesterday, and
How about
TSA.
more parental discipline. This is his grandmother, but
he's a sick individual. He's a broken individual,
right?
And he should not be able to get a gun.
Right.
And I don't know who opposes stop orders. Ducey couldn't get it through the Arizona legislature. I don't know what the deal is. I don't understand that, but I hope he tries again. Grant, thank you. I want to get one more in this hour. Art in Texas, where the shooting occurred. Good morning, Art.
Hey, Hugh. Great. Love your show. Hey, I was born in 1955. When I turned 16, I got a job. It was a government-funded job here in San Antonio. It was called Sonia. In Chicago, you used to have a program called, Chicago Youth Organization. You put them to work at 16 years old. They learn the work ethic. They get a little bit of money. You keep them off the streets. And they didn't think about these things about killing people. They didn't sit at home stewing, thinking about murder. Yes, we should have a gun in every school. The principal and the vice principal should be trained on how to use a gun. Even if it's just a pistol, they can confront the killer.
Well, Art, I think it's better to have, I think principals ought to do principal stuff and teachers do teacher stuff, and I would train like SROs like the officer Tammy, who just called from Ohio, but I appreciate your calling, Art. Youth in America, I've got 5 grandchildren from 10 to 5 days old, and I just don't know what world they're going to live through unless we get some common sense into how to run schools. Maybe we got to get rid of government-operated schools. There's a Jewish day school near where I used to live. They got more security there than anybody ever dreamed of, and they're all former IDF, and no one's getting near that school. You do what you got to do if you're serious. I'll be right back, America. 1-800-520-1234. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship Academy.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com sponsored rolling show where I'm just looking at his Pittsburgh Steelers shirt all day long today because Keith has got his "How many rings have you got?" shirt on because he always does this to me when I'm in when I'm in California. Jeff in Arizona. Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Hugh. Good morning. I just was listening earlier and I heard references you made to Doug Ducey in Arizona and red flag laws.
Well, his was called a stop order, severe threat order of protection, not a red flag law, but go ahead.
Yeah, but you were calling it a red flag law. But anyway, that's beside the point. The issue I wanted to make was that, clear to your listeners, there are no red flag laws in Arizona.
No, it didn't pass. I said that. Doug tried to get it passed. It failed in the Arizona legislature.
Thank God. But,
well, I disagree with you. I'm a big proponent of these.
I disagree with you.
Well, tell me why.
We disagree. Because I don't believe in surrendering my rights to anybody.
You wouldn't. Have you got any mental disability? Would you show up on a red flag law?
Excuse me?
Would a red flag law stop you from buying a weapon?
Would it stop me from buying a weapon?
Yeah.
Probably not.
So you're not giving up any of your rights? I mean, I'll debate it with you another day.
Hugh, the intent of that law is to give up rights.
No, it's not.
Someone who determines on someone else's behalf whether they're mentally ill or not.
Yeah, and that.
I don't.
Do you know that First Amendment rights exist? They are subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restraints. No right is absolute.
That's a whole other debate on First Amendment.
But no rights are absolute.
The Biden administration just tried to bamboozle us with a communication office.
Well, yeah, I agree, but Jeff, don't.
And I wouldn't.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Goodbye. Look, I will stay on point with anyone, but if you're going to argue con law with me, you're going to lose. Second Amendment rights exist. They are subject to strict scrutiny, in my view, though that has not yet been articulated. It is possible to pass narrowly focused laws that limit in very specific way purchases of weapons by mentally disturbed people, and it's no threat to the Second Amendment. Jay in Ohio.
Hugh, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Northeast Ohio kid living in Central Ohio.
Oh, good to have you.
Responder. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. As a first responder, as a firm believer in the right to bear arms, and as the father of two elementary age children, I think we need to take a different approach to how we view these things. We talk about having armed SROs. We do have those. We also had an armed GAR in the Buffalo mass shooting. These individuals sit at home. They adjust tactics the way any other operation is conducted. And in Buffalo, we had a trained police officer who was moonlighting as a security guard, retired, and he was engaged by that officer. And that officer lost his life, and still 9 other people lost their lives. He had a weapon system that, when confronted by a traditional pistol, I'm assuming he was overwhelmed, as well as he was wearing body armor. You know, we need to start looking not at broad concepts, but specific solutions to these problems. These are babies. These are children that lost their lives. I recently discussed Saving Private Ryan with one of my children. And when the day comes, they will see what war looks like. They will see what catastrophic injury looks like. That's what these children suffered yesterday. We are not talking about infringing on individual specific freedoms. But a mass shooter went into a clock tower in 1966 in Texas. He was a trained marksman in the United States military. In 96 minutes, he only killed 14 people, 14 tragic losses of life. A man in Las Vegas used a weapon system to kill dozens and dozens and dozens of people in a few minutes.
So Jay, what is your proposal? Because I want to give you got a minute, and I don't want to cut you off before you get to your proposal.
My proposal, as a child of the 90s, I remember when the North Hollywood shooting happened in Los Angeles, and we had to arm the police officers.
Okay, but Jay, we're really running short.
Final point. We have the ATF issues a tag for a machine gun in this country. If you want to own a weapon system that is a weapon system of war, you should have to register it and tag it through the ATF. That's
okay, and so tell me what that is.
So in the United States of America, in order to own a machine gun.
Oh, well, that I get. I mean, but what weapon systems are you talking about? I mean, are you talking about AR-15s?
I believe in the last 12 to 13 years, an AR style system, an AK style system, any weapon system that is a weapon system of war. I mean, people talk about home defense and things of that nature. That's fine. But if you're talking about defense,
so here's the question,
is a perfect home defense
Jay, would you go into homes and seize those that have already been purchased?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
All right.
They are absolutely they are circulating in the environment. So,
Jay, you make a lot of sense. Obviously, you're an experienced professional. I think that's a bridge too far to go, and it will not pass. And so I'm interested in what would pass, and I believe that you can pass red flag laws aimed at 18 to 25-year-olds that prevent them from buying any sort of weapon. And the Las Vegas shooter was the outlier case. I want to protect schools and innocent children. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. Morning glory, America. Bonjour. Hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I am spending the day taking calls in reaction to the horrific massacre in Texas. In the first hour, I described to you a emotionally disturbed, mentally wrecked 18-year-old buying 2 assault rifles. That's the term that is used in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. They don't specify if they are AR-15s. This child turned adult killer has been mentally disturbed for years, and everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. And as one person quoted in the New York Times said, impossible to miss this kid around town. How he got a gun, I don't know. We'll find out who sold him the guns. We'll find out. I don't think Texas has any red flag law for mentally disturbed people. We'll find that out. I am a big proponent of the stop order law that Doug Ducey proposed and barely failed in the Arizona legislature after the Parkland shooting. And I don't think mentally disturbed people should get weapons. And I do believe that armed officers, as Yoni said, I'm going to play for you a call I had from Yoni, retired member of the Israeli Defense Services, who calls the show occasionally when issues like this arrive. If we have that ready to play, I'll play it. Okay, here's Yoni from last hour. Yoni is in Virginia. Hi, Yoni.
How you doing, Hugh?
Good. What is this Israeli system that the guy called about? Isn't it just that there's lots of people with a lot of trained people with a lot of weapons in Israel to shoot terrorists dead when they show up?
Well, first of all, we got a lot of people with a lot of guns. But in addition to that, the last mass school shooting in Israel happened May 15th, 1974, when you were trying to figure out who to take to the prom. Okay? I mean, seriously, that's how long ago it was. It resulted in 31 dead Israelis, 70 wounded at a school. As a result of that shooting, a couple of things happened. Number one, we created what is today the National Counterterror Unit, YAMAM, part of the Border Police. And secondly, we put at every school armed personnel. All we have to do in America to end this, we don't need to violate people's constitutional rights by restricting magazine capacities or outlawing guns. We need to put at every school armed officers, armed not just with handguns, but with AR-15s, because allegedly this guy yesterday, hasn't been confirmed yet, was engaged with law enforcement in a gunfight before he went into the school, and he was wearing soft body armor. Soft body armor defeats pistol rounds. Rifle rounds will go through it like a hot knife through warm butter. So you arm your guys and gals with AR-15s and pistols. You put them at schools, and we will end this, and it'll be something that goes into our history books, because that's what happened in Israel. And the difference is here we have mental people doing it that have mental issues. And in Israel, we've got the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine and the Islamic Jihad and Hamas. And there's a reason they haven't done this. It's not because all of a sudden they love Jews. It's because they know it's a zero-sum game. They're not even going to get in the front door. They're going to be gunned down before they hit the front door. So for 48 years, we haven't had a mass casualty event at a school.
Every school in Israel has this.
Absolutely. My children's school, my children went to school in Judea, in the southern part of Israel. Their closest neighbors to the school was a Palestinian town that's notorious for terrorism. And on the roof of their school was a sandbagged and placed belt-fed machine gun. Do we need that at our schools in America? Of course not. But you know what? They had it at my kids' school, plus a bunch of guys armed with M16 rifles and pistols, and we never had a single incident at the school. And there's a way to stop this.
When was, and Yoni, I want to get to a lot of people, when was the last terrorist attack on a school in Israel?
May of consequence? I mean, there was one, if I remember right, a mental guy that was near a school. I'm not counting that because he didn't even hit the school. The last one of any consequence was at Ma'alot in northern Israel, and that was on May 15th, 1974. 31 dead Israelis, 70 wounded Israelis, and we put an end to it because why? Because we know that good people with guns stop bad people with guns.
Yoni, thank you. Eloquent. I appreciate it. The reason I replay that is because the tendency of anyone who wants to get rid of guns in America is to take every horrific massacre and expand it. I always focus on specifics. And Parkland, Columbine, Newtown, and now Uvalde are all the same killer. A 18 or 17 or 16 or 19-year-old nut, crazy person who gets access to weapons, who should not have been able to get a weapon. I can't stop the Buffalo shooting. That's a white supremacist nut. You can't stop that. That's going to happen in America. Although he should have failed the red flag law in New York. They're not complete answers. School security would cost no more than $45 billion a year. If you're serious about it, Congress passes a spending clause supported constitutional act that says we will give you the equivalent of whatever share, $45 billion, depending on, there are 131,000 public and private schools, K through 12, in the United States. Enough money to provide for 10 hours a day of 2 armed officers, as Yoni said. I mean, really armed officers. And they take care of the school and they respond because only a heavily armed officer is going to stop a heavily armed crazy person. And you don't get that money unless you adopt a stop order law like Doug Ducey's, good conservative law, narrowly focused, constitutional. Not all laws concerning guns fail the second Constitution. Obviously, you don't get to have a machine gun in the United States, and that's constitutional law. Heller didn't establish strict scrutiny for these laws. I think it's appropriate or intermediate scrutiny. But I am as conservative as anyone comes. I'm a constitutionalist, and I know the Constitution allows that. What do you think, Mike in California?
Hello?
Hey, Mike, good morning.
Hi, yeah. First of all, people have to remember the primary purpose of the Second Amendment.
Mike, we don't need a seminar on that. What do you want to do? What's your proposal?
Well, we have to do several things. First of all, Yoni made some really good points. We also have to get God back in the schools. Okay, we have to teach values in the schools, not teaching boys.
Mike, that's not going to stop the nuts. You know that, right?
No. Well, you cannot stop the nuts. The red flag laws won't work at all because just like anyone can get illegal drugs if they are determined to get them, the same with guns. There's an underground economy for anything you want. So that's a false sense of
Okay,
security.
Mike, that's interesting, but I'm curious. It would get some people. It would alert some people because mentally disturbed people will try and buy a gun the right way. They'll be turned down, and officers will know about it.
They can murder more people without a gun. You probably
Mike, I don't understand why you're opposed to red flag laws.
Several reasons. Because the reason they're being promoted by the Democrats is...
I'm not a Democrat. Doug Ducey isn't a Democrat. I'm a conservative constitutionalist Republican.
These things to expand them, to make them all encompassing.
Okay, that's the wedge. All right. Mike, thank you. I appreciate gun enthusiasts. I appreciate Second Amendment people, but they don't engage with me. I'm a conservative constitutionalist. I teach the Constitution. I know the Heller case. I know what it means to pass a narrowly focused law. The argument that it's the thin edge of the wedge is the same argument that's used against everyone. Time, place, and manner restrictions on the First Amendment have been around forever. They do not become impediments to the full exercise of your First Amendment rights. Tim in Tennessee. Go ahead, Tim.
Hey, Hugh. Just a few quick points. I'm not opposed to red flag laws, as you've outlined them, but I just, as the last gentleman said, I don't think they're going to do much. I know there's little experience in the United States with them, but is there any evidence that they actually have worked?
Oh, no, they didn't work in New York 10 days ago. Okay. If you stop one massacre of 19 children, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, again, it's hard to argue that, but I think like the last gentleman said, good people with guns stop bad people with guns. Getting armed people in the schools.
That is my first. Yeah, that's my first proposal. 2 heavily armed, trained specialists at every school cost about $45 billion a year.
And what about enforcing our current laws? When I bought a weapon last week, and you have to have this whole checklist. And one is, have you ever committed a felony? And fortunately, I have not. But we know a lot of people lie on those forms. And
yeah, well, look, again, the problem set isn't the Second Amendment. The problem set is crazy people and defenseless children. And it's the worst problem set in America. I've done this twice. It's the worst 3 times. I don't think I was on I don't think I had a program on Columbine Day, but I did Parkland. I've done Newton and now Uvalde. It's the worst thing in the world. Nevada, Las Vegas, you can't stop that. That's a psychopath or somebody deeply in debt to a cartel who was a sick mind at work, and that's, he might not have been sick. He's a cold-blooded murderer. You can't stop serial killers. You can't stop them. You can stop nuts going into elementary schools and murdering innocent children. That can and should be done. But do not overreach. Do not stop yourself by trying to do more than that. I'll be right back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Markets yesterday were mixed. Interest rates are going up. AndrewandTodd.com are great sponsors of this show. And if you're buying a home, please use AndrewandTodd.com. I've known them forever. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. You call them at 888-888-1172. We will pause and we will mourn the loss of innocent life, the destruction of lives by a crazy 18-year-old who should never have been allowed to buy weapons. We will talk about what to be done, and I hope that the left doesn't overreach. We have a Second Amendment for a reason. You can't overreach, but you can pass narrowly tailored, highly specific laws to prevent people like this killer from getting weapons on their 18th birthday. And you can pass laws that allow people who suspect this individual of being deranged. And he had quite a few red flags. Now, red flag laws don't always work. They are narrowly tailored. They don't always work, and bureaucrats run them, so they don't always work. But you can harden schools, and you can use the spending clause to do that. It costs about $45 billion a year to put two well-armed, heavily trained, very, very, very competent law enforcement professionals at every one of America's 131,000 K-12 schools, public and private. And if states don't want the money, they don't want the money. But if they want to harden their schools, they should have to pass a red flag law that is narrowly tailored and constitutionally firm. What do you think? Gil in New Mexico.
Good morning, you, and thanks for taking my call. We're not going to solve this problem completely, but we're going to have to take a comprehensive look at mental health. I'm of the opinion that the Community Mental Health Act of 1964 was formed improperly. It assumes that most mental health disturbances can be treated.
Gil, I appreciate that, but we're not doing seminars today on mental health. I agree that we need mental health, but I am concerned about innocent children at schools. And reforming the mental health system is a years-long topic and will be debated for years, et cetera. I think we can harden schools.
Somewhere, you.
I start with the school. I start with the first, second, third, and fourth graders at this elementary school. I start where the problem is that has America talking about it. Focus on that school, and you'll get what you need. You don't need a mental health law review at this point. You need to harden the schools, and you need to deny weapons to crazy people. Gil?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, well, thank you. Appreciate the call. Andrew in Lakewoods. Is Lakewood in Texas, Andrew? Oh, Lakewood, Ohio. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey, Hugh. I just wanted to touch on a few topics. Look, I think I have the solution, all right? The schools just, bottom line, have too many open doors. You limit the schools to having two openings, one opening for the bus ramps, one opening for the beginning of the very front of the school, and you put two resource officers there.
Well, yeah, you're hardening the schools. We agree.
That's fine, but you have two openings that they have to go through an armed guard. I think that would completely take away any door that they could possibly come through.
Andrew, I agree. Now that will prove impossible at some schools. I'm having raised 3 children and having 5 grandchildren. I know about a lot of schools. And you don't really solve the problem completely because a lot of kids walk to school, there's school buses, there are lots of ways, but you do solve a lot of the problem. And I'm not looking, you can't have a perfect world with evil, disturbed people in it. There will be illegal guns, there will be soft targets everywhere. I'm looking to protect second, third, and fourth graders in classrooms. And
it's a horrible, tragic incident, but I just wanted to touch on a couple facts that a lot of people don't forget about.
You got 1 minute until the break.
In Chicago.
No, don't do that. No. Andrew, thank you. There is no diversion from this today. Do not avert your eyes. Do not say, let's talk about Chicago, the murder rate. Let's not talk about violence on the New York subways. I know all about that. Do not avert your eyes. Look at elementary schools in America, please. Those little children don't know what to do. They don't have a chance. This is different from everything else. Don't allow yourself the luxury of saying, oh, Newtown and Uvalde are a part of a bigger problem. Don't do that. Focus on this problem, this horror. I'll be right back. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship Academy.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt on a horrific morning because it was a horrific afternoon and evening last night, joined by Congressman Mike Gallagher, with whom I usually joke, but he is the father of a youngster. I'm the grandfather of 2 new grandbabies as of Friday, and 3 other. One is in 2nd grade, was in 4th grade, so I'm shocked. Good morning, Congressman. Just this morning, I want to talk to you as a congressman. You'll get a lot of calls today. To me, it seems obvious that if you use your spending clause authority, you can give the money necessary to harden schools and have armed response at every school, and I'm trying to focus on a specific problem, and you could require red flag laws. What do you expect is going to happen? Because I don't, watching Steve Kerr storm out of a press conference, the president's rather inept speech last night, or Chris Murphy swearing on the Senate floor doesn't do anything for me. There is a specific problem here. What do we do?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's just impossible to express how big of a tragedy this is. I mean, as you mentioned, if you're a parent, I mean, this is the absolute nightmare scenario. And one thing that worries me, and I think it's happening to Kristen Sinema right now, is that anyone in public office who is simply expressing the horror in hearing this news, or saying they want to pray for the families, if they're not immediately going to, we're going to do X, Y, Z, they're getting attacked online. And I think that's really problematic, because we need to take time to understand the specifics of this case, whether the extent of the mental health issues that this individual had, and it seems like there was a well-established history of concerning behavior that went unaddressed. So that's an area where I feel like there is more we can do to address growing mental health problems, as well as to ascertain what gun laws he violated before suggesting that another gun law would have prevented this crisis. And I think one thing that often gets ignored in a lot of cases like this is that we do not enforce existing gun laws right now.
Right. The New York red flag law failed in the Buffalo Killers case.
Exactly. I just spent a half a day with the NYPD on Monday, and I asked them, what are your top concerns right now? And in addition to continuing to have their guard up with threats from terrorist groups and domestic extremists, they're very concerned about the flow of guns. And one of the biggest issues is strawman purchases. We don't do a good job of cracking down on strawman purchases in this country. So
I don't know what that means, Congressman. What's that?
Essentially, someone buys a gun legally, but then gives it to someone else.
Okay.
Which is
illegal.
And that's something we can absolutely get at today without passing another gun law. So all I'm saying is let's dig into the details of this horrific case, and let's ascertain specifically what failed in the system and what could have been done to prevent this. And then let's have a thoughtful policy response, as opposed to immediately going to demonizing someone just because you disagree with their political views.
I agree with that too. I do, however, I got lots of calls this morning, and it's like call and response. There are 4 things that stand out: Columbine and Parkland, Newton, and now Uvalde. The Las Vegas shooter is a strange outlier case that's never been solved, because my own personal guess, and it's a wild guess, is he's deeply in debt to someone and he wanted to injure a casino. That's what I think. But, there's no one has ever figured that out. The Buffalo shooter is a white supremacist at a random soft target. It's impossible to harden every target in America, but protecting innocent children in their classrooms, those who don't even know how to respond, I mean, they're too young. That seems to me to be the problem set. And it seemed to me that the federal government spent $6.8 trillion last year. And if it costs $45 billion a year to harden schools, meaning armed officers, the spending clause is available to you guys, provided that the local, I don't want to pass a federal law telling you who to hire. I don't want another TSA. But you can offer to every school district the money necessary to hire those 2 officers for every school.
Well, I did get this last night from a buddy of mine I served with in the Marine Corps who works for the FBI now. And he pointed out that under current federal law, all retired law enforcement officers of any department can carry weapons as long as they continue to meet their department's qualification standards. So how could you then incentivize these individuals to backstop or supplement school resource officers so you have an enhanced security protection for schools? I mean, you could look towards certain incentives, whether it's, tax incentives or a federal back state county level tax credit for hours served as security at schools. And those people would perform no law enforcement function, but would be able to protect schools well within the bounds of existing law. And you could have them be specifically recommended for this duty by the department they retired from, or the local department that has jurisdiction over the school. So I think there's a way where we can harness recently retired professional law enforcement or even certain veterans in order to supplement school resource officers right now. And I think there's a big community of people in those categories that would love that mission post-retirement.
That's a normal person's response, which is the problem is elementary schools and high schools. That's our specific problem. The answer is security. And the other problem is mentally disturbed individuals getting a hold of guns. And this individual, if the early reports is correct, is very disturbed. Everybody in town knew it. On his 18th birthday, he bought 2 weapons capable of mass slaughter, and nobody said a word. And I also think that is a problem. I think that is a major problem in America's gun laws. And I don't know what the Texas law is. I don't know if you violate any gun laws. But when I see Steve Kerr storming out, that doesn't do anything. In fact, it makes it worse because I get calls from Second Amendment advocates saying this is the thin edge of the wedge. If they pass a red flag law or a stop order like Doug Ducey promoted, they'll be after my handgun next. And that's not a very good argument. And you're not a lawyer, you're a PhD, but strict scrutiny under Heller, if it is strict scrutiny, would not allow that. And I just try and tell people that, but you can't talk about this issue without both of the extremes coming at you like you're trying to take away their weapons or you're in favor of slaughter.
Exactly. And how does that bring you closer to any productive solution? If your opening salvo, whether you're Steve Kerr or I don't know, Senator Murphy or whoever, is, Republicans are complicit in the violence, which is just a crazy and reprehensible suggestion, then how are you actually going to have a discussion and figure out where, state or federal laws need to be tweaked or figure out how to, surge more resources to protecting schools? And we actually had a bill. Republicans introduced legislation, it's called the MVP Act in the past, which Democrats rejected, which would have taken concrete steps to protect people's rights while ensuring people that shouldn't have weapons don't get them. I mean, for example, it modified criminal penalties for an offense involving the theft of a firearm from a federal firearms licensee. It directed the Department of Justice to take specific actions to prevent gun violence, such as establishing a mass violence prevention center at DOJ, which would serve as the primary government organization for analyzing and integrating all government intelligence pertaining to threats of mass violence. Also enhanced the number of assistant U.S. attorneys that we would need to implement things like Project Safe Neighborhoods, which is the national initiative to reduce gun violence in the United States. So I think there are ways that you can get at this problem without stoking concerns about infringing on people's Second Amendment rights. But again, if the opening part of the discussion is, you're evil, you're complicit in the violence, I just don't know how we get to that productive discussion.
I also, look, you can't legislate this, but I would ask the producers of America's television shows to stop with the video. And we're not using it this morning because that incentivizes some twisted mind. Just stop with the wall-to-wall. I appreciate conversations, difficult as they were. I watched last night with some Newton parents talking about what the parents are going through in Uvalde. I have a glimmer of it. I don't know what I would do. I just don't know what I would do. But I pray for those people, and I think it's irresponsible, reprehensible, actually, to mock people who say that. But it's good luck to you with your colleagues across the aisle. I know some of them are going to go right to their corner and start punching Republicans. And I also know that some Second Amendment absolutists are going to resist the idea of anything, but I do believe there's lots of middle ground, Congressman. Lots of middle ground. And I hope you find it. Congressman Mike Gallagher, thank you. I want to make sure I tell people about my sponsors this morning. This few weeks we are devoted to telling you about Prison Fellowship's many, many ministries. The Prison Fellowship Academy is one of those. You get a free 14-day devotional if you just go to hughhewitt.com and click on Breaking the Cycle of Crime banner. That's not related to today's awful topic, but we would like to break the cycle of crime for everyone, and Prison Fellowship is in America's prisons doing just that. It works. Study by the Minnesota Department of Corrections have included that less than 1% of Academy graduates in that state have gone back into custody. That's just like the end of recidivism. Prison Fellowship knows what they're doing, and they're making available to you a lot of information on that. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking you to go study what Prison Fellowship does over at hughhewitt.com. I also want to tell you about the Job Creators Network attempt to rockthewoke.com, meaning that they are very much interested in stopping corporate America from frolics and detours into left-wing extremism of the ideological sort. StopTheWoke.com is available now from Job Creators Network. They don't want woke ideology taking over corporate boards. They don't want woke ideology taking over HR departments. They don't want woke ideology getting in the way of shareholder value. And you can do your part at rockthewoke.com, rockthewoke.com. And my friends at JCN are the best at this. Tim in Ohio, line 4. Hi, Tim. Good morning.
Good morning, Hugh. My solution is two-pronged. One, you harden the schools, and secondly, you work it with interventionists to bullies and those who are being bullied. First off, by hardening the schools, you do like the one person said, by making the exits limited, and also you video surveillance all portions of the school. So when you see activity of a bully, you can go and speak with the bully and the person being bullied and counsel both sides. The other thing that I would do is I would start in the elementary schools working with the kids who are starting to become bullies or who are being bullied.
Now, Tim, I am all in favor of that. I do think that that's, again, comprehensive conversation, important conversation. The idea of hardening elementary schools is what, these are horrific when they happen at any school. They're the worst when they happen to children who don't even have an idea what to do. They're utterly defenseless people. And I'm glad and thankful that the Border Patrol engaged. I wish there had been more. I don't know that there was an SRO there who was armed. We will find out more today. Don't forget your relieffactor.com. Mine's at the hotel where I'm staying in California today, but I don't take it until 6 a.m. And I'm talking to early in California. And so I want to remind you, relieffactor.com, even on horrific days, I do want to remind you, don't forget to take that. $19.95 will get you started. When we come back, I'll take more phone calls from you. 1-800-520-1234. 19 children, I said, or 18 earlier this morning. Now 19 have died, and hundreds are afraid this morning. Thousands, millions are mourning, and so am I. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship Academy.
Welcome back, America. I'm taking calls on the Hugh Hewitt Show about the massacre in Texas. I'm so sick to my stomach, but I know people want to talk about it, so I clear the deck of most guests and talk about it. David in Georgia, where last night Brian Kemp, and Rasberger both won renomination by the Republicans handily. That's the big political story I would have been talking about today, but it's been overcome, of course, by this massacre. What do you think, David?
Well, I can tell you through my experience as a school resource officer that we have a lot of problems with this issue. There's no easy solutions. We could probably talk all day about different aspects of it. But red flag laws are not a solution that will solve many, if any, of these problems, and they're fundamentally flawed. I haven't seen one that doesn't have extreme due process concerns.
Well, I looked at the Arizona draft, and I was persuaded that that was constitutional, but of course the due process clause would apply to any statute that passes, as would the Second Amendment's Heller standard. But David, as an SRO, what do you carry in the school? What weaponry do you carry?
Glock 17 primarily. Some of our officers were also equipped with AR rifles, semi-auto rifles.
If you had been at that school, could you have stopped that killer?
Yeah. At what point? Do you want to? It's hard to really discuss it in depth when so few facts have come out.
Well, yeah, I'm just curious, how big is the school that you protect? And by the way, thank God for you and your colleagues. We need more of you, and we need more weapons with you, and we need serious hardening of entry and exit from schools.
And that's really the biggest problem. I work in the largest school district in the state. We have tons of schools, tons of students. Hardening the schools is a difficult issue. There's 2 SROs in every high school, 1 SRO in every middle school. There are a few elementary school officers that are scattered around that cover the multitude of elementary schools in each of those high school clusters. So there's not one in every school, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, let's start there. Why not?
Well, it comes down to money.
Of course it does.
So many other potential solutions.
And the federal government spent $6.8 trillion last year. Can I ask you, David, what do you make a year?
About $60K.
And what with your benefits, what do you cost?
I'm sorry, say again?
Add in your benefits, does that make it $90K, pension, retirement, medical?
No. $60K, $60K with health insurance.
Okay, I'm here to tell you, we can afford this. We can afford to. There are 131,000 K through 12 public and private schools. We can afford this. I went to the airport the other day. You know how many TSA people we have? We have 47,000 TSA people that cost about $7 billion a year. So I did the math. Even if we paid TSA rates for the 2 SROs, it would cost about $45 billion to put 2 of you at every K through 12 public and private school in America. We can afford this.
I agree, and there's other things that we can do to help harden the schools as targets. Many of our schools have very easy egress and ingress into the schools.
Because
administrators have.
It's just not acceptable. Every 10 years, it's not acceptable to have a Newton. It's not acceptable every 10 years to have a Parkland or a Columbine or an Uvalde. That's what we're. Buffalo, you can't do anything about that. There's a red flag law in Buffalo. It didn't stop a crazy white supremacist high school kid, just recent graduate, from getting weapons and killing black people. We can't do anything about that.
That's part of the problem with common sense gun control, because there's really no common sense gun control.
No, I do believe that there are stop order laws, severe threat order of protection laws that respect due process and the Second Amendment and have been upheld.
Yeah, but none of the ones that I believe you would support would do anything to solve any of these shootings.
Yeah, it didn't work in New York. I'm very aware.
No.
It didn't work in New York, but it might. The trouble with them, officer, is that you never know when they work.
Sure.
It's what the CIA says.
But
you never know when we win.
You never know when they don't, but you do know that there are thousands of incidents every year where bad people with guns intending harm on others are stopped by good people with guns.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And officer, I want to, again, thank you. You're going to go to work today. You're going to protect children.
Well, I'm at work now, giving some coverage to one of my elementary schools just to be a little bit more visible, to ease some troubled hearts and minds. But that's what we're here for. And
we don't pay you
continue
enough,
to do
but
that.
God bless you. Thank you, David. I want to get to Michael in Phoenix, Arizona before we got a minute, Michael, so you got to be quick. What's your solution? What's your proposal?
Real quick, Hugh, I've got a to-do for you. Take that recording of that guy from Israel and play it for Tom Cotton, for Mike Gallagher, for all your other friends in the Senate and House. That is the answer. The only thing I disagree with you on, Hugh, is I don't think you want to tie the money with the red flag law. I'm okay with the red flag laws, but we need some action on this, and I think if you play that recording,
I'm going. By the way, I'm ahead of you. We're going to put that on YouTube because it is the answer, isn't it?
Thank you, Hugh.
We're ahead of you, Michael. Thank you. Don't go anywhere, America. Hour number 3 on a very dark morning in America, along with the days of Newton and Parkland, of Columbine, and other horrific massacres. A terrible, terrible day. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay with us. Morning Glory, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. What a horrific morning. I'm sure you know the terrible slaughter in Uvalde, Texas, of innocent children, 2 teachers, 19 children, and 2 teachers killed by a deeply disturbed 18-year-old. And the Washington Post has a profile of the killer, and he was bullied and he did have a stutter, but he's been on everybody's radar for a very long time. He hasn't been in school for a long time. He cut himself up with knives. He was just a mess. And he bought 2 assault weapons. I don't know what that means. The details, maybe they're not. Early reports are always wrong. But the fact is, the specific problem in front of us are schools. Parkland, Columbine are high schools. Newton and Robb Elementary in Uvalde are elementary schools. And they need to be hardened, every school in America. There are 131,000 K through 12 schools. They each need 2, at least 2, armed, trained professionals. That is the problem set. I also believe deeply in red flag laws that are very, very narrowly tailored to respect the Constitution, the right to due process, the constitutional requirements of the Second Amendment, because the Constitution is what we live for and live by. But I'd like to know what you think. I've been talking a lot this morning. I grieve so much because these parents, I forced myself to listen to parents of children who have been murdered. They deserve that. Their solutions are not always correct. Their emotions sometimes interfere with their understanding of the constitutional requirements. I don't care about Steve Kerr. I know his father was murdered, and I grieve for that. But Judge Mike Littig's father was murdered too, and he doesn't forget the Constitution. And I understand Chris Murphy, deeply scarred by Newton. It doesn't make them right about what to do. I think I'm right about hardening schools and paying for it. And I think I got the math right. It costs about $45 billion a year to put 2 of these people, heavily trained, heavily armed professionals at every K through 12 public and private school in America, and the spending clause is available to do it. And if you think $45 billion is a lot of money, the federal government spent $6.81 trillion last year. Chris in Dallas, Texas. Chris, what do you think?
Hello, Mr. Hewitt. I basically think that what we need to do is we need to do something very similar to what you suggested. You need to harden the schools, and you need to provide everyone with the ability to defend themselves. But one of the problems that I've seen in the classroom, because I'm a teacher of 8 years experience, is that the doctrine in classrooms most of the time is hide in the dark and pray. And while I've got nothing wrong with praying, it doesn't fix the problem. What I tell my students is, no, we'll shut off the lights, we'll be silent. But every student in my room knows that even during the drills, you pick up something you can throw, you barricade the door, and if that door comes open and it is not a police officer or your principal, then you are going to throw everything we have at this person. And if need be, I will use a broken chair leg, and we will defend ourselves to the death.
And Chris, that is, by the way, there is an Israeli self-defense program that teaches people to use any object in any room. Right in front of me is a coffee pot. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, right here, this is about the deadliest thing in this room. I say, well, Kevin's pretty deadly. He's a Steelers fan, but I've got this coffee pot, and there is actually a doctrine, a way to do that, and you are talking to that. And Chris, I think that's the right mindset. I do. Thank you, and thank you for teaching kids. Dan in Kentucky. Dan is in line 3 in Kentucky. Hey, Dan.
Hey, you big time fan. Hey, I want to talk about something. Everybody's kind of hitting around it, but there's squarely accountability on every school board member and school board around the country. And the reason being, they're more worried about talking about LGBT and other gay and lesbian topics versus making our schools safe.
Well, Dan, you can. Dan, can I stop? We can do 2 things. I don't mind school boards doing school board things, but making schools safe should be on every agenda every night. And I've been to a lot of school board meetings, and I served on an advisory school board council for a long time. When I lived in California, I lived on a county commission that funded schools. There's a lot of stuff they got to cover, and there's a lot of stuff they have to deal with. I mean, you cannot not deal with some issues, but school safety should be on there. And I don't want to confuse issues today. But we need to harden schools, right?
Right, we do, but also, too, I think the mama bears on both sides of the parties need to come to these meetings and put it in front and make it a priority agenda. And
that's a
make
good
sure
idea. That is a good idea. You ought to go down and, in a civil way, ask your school board, why do we not have heavily armed school resource officers at every school? And I recommend that.
Right,
Thank you. Brandon in Phoenix, Arizona. Hi, Brandon. Line 4.
Well, the question that I have is based on what happened, this horrible massacre yesterday, is a couple of things were reported a number of times in the news yesterday that the red flags were missed about this idiot when he posted on the internet that he was going to do something.
Yeah, I don't actually know that again, early reports. I know he's crazy. I know he's a broken individual. I know he took a picture with his new assault weapons.
Right.
I asked Mark Zuckerberg, all right? I asked Mark at dinner, does the social media company have the ability to identify people who are, he said, no, we don't. And I'm not sure we would use it. I don't know that we would use it, but this is obviously, the Buffalo shooter was the same way. He put a manifesto up.
Here's the thing. When, at the same time when this was reported, there was a attempted assassination of former President Bush reported, and within 20 minutes, the Secret Service acted.
Yeah, the Secret Service is different.
Where is the equal protection under the law?
Brandon, let me explain something. Let me explain something. Brandon, let me say something. We can't do Secret Service for everyone in America, nor do I want Secret Service for everyone in America. We know that some individuals in America are targeted by assassins and foreign governments, and we protect them. We just can't do that for everyone. It's way much more than the $45 billion. We can't do that, and nor do we want to do that. Do you want TSA everywhere in your life?
Well, we pay them for. Come on, Hugh, don't avoid the issue.
No, I'm not avoiding the issue. Is that
yes, the law is not the same for everybody.
Well, okay, Brandon, thank you. I appreciate the call. The former presidents of the United States are particularly vulnerable targets, and we have to protect them, Democrat and Republican. You don't have the Quds forces going after schools, or there'd be a lot more school shootings. They're completely different problem sets. It does not mean that the laws are different. There are different situations. Steve in Indiana. Hi, Steve. Hey, Steve. Good morning, Steve. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to call in driving to work in retired law enforcement and actually the executive director of the Indiana Sheriff's Association.
Oh.
And the one thing we want to talk about is hardening the classroom.
Yeah, well, and hold forth. What do we need to do?
I think there's a lot of moving pieces, as we know, to school safety. And the one thing we can all agree on, I believe, whether politically you're a Republican or Democrat, is enhancing school safety. And then when we get to the discussion of guns and mental health, we kind of split the decision and we don't get any progress. But in the end, you'll find out that hardening the classroom, that's the last place where, kids are going to feel safe, teachers are going to feel safe. And by simply just having a door rating system that investing maybe a couple more $100 where you're having a better door with a ballistic rating, lock rating, and a hinge is enough to save lives. As you see, sometimes many of these shooters, Parkland and this one, they go from classroom to classroom. And just by changing that door out is going to create a safer space.
Steve, God bless you. That's the most coherent thing I've heard. This, I'm a civilian. I don't know anything about hardening schools. There are professionals, and you are the executive director of the Indiana Sheriff's Association?
Yes, sir.
Do you have do you have experts at I saw a lot of experts on TV last night, and they didn't tell me anything. You just told me more than everyone I've heard on TV in this show today. You just told me.
Well, it's common sense, and that's what we're not doing. We're not looking at common sense solutions, because I know as a homeowner, I rely on a good door to keep me safe and my family. And it's the same principle for schools. And hardening that door can save lives. And then we have to look at the other moving pieces. But, you know, that's one of the things we're going to be pushing here in Indiana. We have legislative meetings coming up, but, you know, let the parents decide if they want to invest a little more in their schools.
Steve, amen. I don't know where the money comes from. We got lots of money. We're spending money like we're printing money. We can put doors on school classrooms that automatically close and protect. God bless you, Steve. Good call. I'll be right back. 1-800-520-1234. Connection to Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America, on a horrific morning in America. The names now become Columbine and Parkland, Newton and Robb Elementary in Uvalde. And 19 children, 2 teachers murdered by a maniac, a killer, and a crazy person. And I hope you notice we haven't talked about ethnicity today. It's not a supremacist thing. It's not a race thing. It's not like the white supremacists in Buffalo, the worst nightmare of every parent. I'm just talking to people. I do want to remind you, our sponsor, AndrewandTodd.com. They do market updates every day at this time. Mixed market yesterday. I expect more bad news for a few more weeks until we figure out inflation factored in. Then there'll be a rebound. I'm not going to worry about it. But the home market is going to slow because interest rates are going up, but that's not going to mean prices are going down. So if you're going to buy a house, go to AndrewandTodd.com or call them at 888-888-1172. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. Let me see who's waited the longest. Art in Ohio. Hi, Art.
Hey, Hugh.
Good morning.
First of all, praying for everybody in Texas, and I'm 100% for hardening the schools. But until that's done, I understand this was an outside event. These kids are outside. It's a pre-planned event. The school knows they're going to be outside. Why can't they get a hold of the local law enforcement, let them know, hey, on this day at this time, kids are going to be outside?
Art, I don't think the children were outside.
Oh, I thought they were.
No, Art, I saw a little bit of video of the killer entering the school.
Okay, I got it.
All right, buddy. Be well. Thank you for listening. Let's go to Dave in Tampa, Florida.
We'll figure it out.
Dave, you're on.
You said Dave?
Yeah.
Hey, I have a good suggestion for you. Everybody talks about money to fund this, protecting the schools. We have an active military that's already trained, already armed, and ability to do it. They're already on the payroll. Why not use our military? If you're going to say it's federal, then use our state National Guard.
There's actually you can't use state National Guard because they're not activated, and that costs money. And they're not trained armies are not trained for this. Armies are trained to move as an army to kill and advance against an organized, and we need them to do what they do. I mean, we got sailors at sea right now and soldiers training, and they got to train. They don't stand around doing anything. I'm a civilian, Dave, but I got a son-in-law, and a nephew on active duty service in the military, and they don't sit around doing nothing. They sit around protecting you. And so it doesn't work. You got to hire people for this. Thank you for the call. Mike in Columbus, Ohio. Mike.
Hey, Hugh. You've heard of these acoustic shot spotter systems, right?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so a lot of cities have these acoustic systems. They use them in, rough neighborhoods where the microphones can detect gunshots, and they use that to dispatch police. If you put some of those acoustic systems in the schools, they'll hear the gunshots, and you can integrate that with the door locks. Wouldn't work when the kids are outside of the classroom, like in between periods, but when the children are in the classrooms. I have 3 kids in elementary school. Just dropped them off. And when they're in the classrooms, presuming that the doors are any good, if the shot spotter system heard gunshots, and I don't care if it's a false alarm, what's the harm?
Great idea. Mike, I didn't know about such a system. Great idea. And it will save lives, but the doors are an obvious thing. An acoustic system is an obvious thing, and it's as obvious as armed presence on the campus, right?
Sure thing, yeah.
I mean, they're obvious things.
Guys that are, they're undergrads. I think there's been some talk about getting some of the ROTC kids out there. Better than nothing.
Well, I really believe in professionals. When you dropped your kids off today, did you look at the school differently?
I didn't. I have that luxury, right, where you feel safe until you don't. But I'm not worried right now. But that you say that until you get the phone call or you read the news, and then
that's the problem. It happens every 10 years at an elementary school, every 10 years at a high school. There are some extremely deranged people in the United States, and they should not get weapons. And I think we can do both ends of it, but I do believe in protecting the least protected people, innocent children who have no idea what to do. None. Zero. Mike, thank you. I'll be right back. 1-800-520-1234. More of your phone calls on this dark morning in America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, talking with people about this horrific morning in America, the shooting at Robb Elementary School by a killer who took the lives of 19 innocent children in the young grades, 7 through 10-year-olds. And it's the same as Newton. It's as horrific as Newton, Columbine, Parkland. But the younger the child, the less likely they are to have any idea what to do. Shane in Oklahoma.
How you doing, Hugh?
Terrible.
I hear you there. My thing is, I'd say secured facilities. I mean, there's no reason that these schools can't be secured. Here, where I'm at, my children, they have secured doors. They have to come in. If they come in after drop-off, even if they go to the school, they have to be buzzed in. There's a camera that sees who it is. Even after that, somebody walks to the front and physically lets them in. And they have 2 doors, one for the buses, one for the drop-off, pickup, and walk-ins. And then on top of that, also our public schools here have a program called Watchdogs, where parents, mostly fathers, volunteer on their days off to go in and walk the halls, make sure all the doors are secured, make sure the facility is secured, nobody's not where they're not supposed to be at. It can be done. I know it seems like a hassle, but it's very easily done. We do it here in Oklahoma, in Norman, with a population of 196,000. My kids are in a chartered school, but it is a public-funded charter school. I mean, there's no reason anybody should be able to just walk into a school.
Shane, you are absolutely right. And let's focus on that. Let's focus on taking care of these children. Shane, thank you. James in Kentucky. What do you think, James?
Well, first off, I'd like to say I'm an engineer, and I like to provide solutions to the world's problems. And I also had 10 years of federal service for the Navy, Department of the Navy, specifically in providing security for our ships. Now, that's not when they're at war or when they're out to sea, but when they're inshore.
Like the Bonhomme Richard did not have security, and it burned down, and we lost the capital ship. Yep.
Right. Well, basically, what we always took, and what anybody in the security industry always does, is to protect an asset, you do a layered approach. And I've heard a couple good things so far, the acoustics things, the hardened doors for each of the classrooms. And in this layered approach, this is, the broad look to it, the overall look to it. You got to have, as the last gentleman was saying, at the school level, at the outside doors. So you got the outside doors, you have the acoustics systems inside and or outside, depending on the layout of the school. You have hardened doors, and then you have SROs. And that's a comprehensive, as you're proposing, if we have that comprehensive system in all the schools, I mean, this is going to cut the problem down to daggone near nothing.
Well, it's going to solve one problem, which is vulnerable children at school. Violence in America. We're not talking about the Buffalo supermarket murder is a white supremacist, and we can't stop that. We can't harden every place in America. There was a guy with a gun there, not enough of a gun.
The other thing also is the deterrence factor. So we got the layered approach, which is the physical barrier, the physical stopping of an assailant. But we also want to have the deterrence factor. And then you got to prosecute. On the back end, that's also a deterrent. So you got the physical, the visible deterrent of an officer who is making friends with all the kids and say, "Oh, hey, I want to grow up and be a police officer too." And therefore, we other things in society help out with that as well.
James, you're right. And deterrence, by the way, the grandmother may be dead, but people know. People know. And the friends, he was shy and he was bullied. They knew he was nuts. I mean, this kid is crazy and cutting himself on his face years ago and not in school for a year. And they just asked a random guy in the town. He said, "Oh, yeah, I know he is. Everybody knows that kid." So he's walking around in black. And, the Second Amendment enthusiasts should not be alarmed by a law that says that person can't get a gun. James, thank you. Tim in Colorado Springs.
Hey, Hugh, appreciate you diving into this tough subject this morning. I remember walking across the parking lot of the high school that I worked at when Columbine happened, I remember walking across the parking lot with tears in my eyes to go into my own classroom. And shoot, I'm about to do the same thing. Walk into a classroom again this morning to go love some kids with some science and help them be good problem solvers. And I think you're on point about providing safety at the schools with people. Doors and breezeways into schools, those are all physical things that we can do. And I was an elementary principal for 2 years, and so my heart is broken for these families and all the friends at school that are. All the kids in America right now are scared. Hugh, it's just real.
Of course.
So I think your idea about having a hardened and trained people on campus, that's not a bad idea. And part of the reason I agree with you is because more good people with more good relationships with kids is a good thing. And so we're going to
sheepdogs are out there. I don't want this SRO at Parkland who failed. I want sheepdogs.
No, I agree with you.
I want sheepdogs.
Yeah, I think it's good.
And I don't. In Colorado Springs, you probably have a lot more indoor. My kids went to California schools, and the campuses are accessible, and there are like 25 different ways into the school, and there's a lot of milling around outside. You need people.
You do need people, and our schools aren't really that much different. The high school that I'm at right now has lots of exterior entrances, but they're locked, and that's the best you can do. But breezeways in, we've got it at our school. That's a help, but adults that are in the building that are there with the kids, relating well with the kids, and then trained for these things and armed is not wrong.
Yes, it is. It's expensive, but it's got to be a priority because every 10 years is not good enough.
It's not good enough, and it's a long-term priority, America. It's a long-term priority of paying for it and accepting the responsibility of. We're going to have the Second Amendment, then we need to have accepting the responsibility that sometimes somebody crazy is going to do the wrong thing.
And defenseless children are our number one priority. And Tim, thank you for doing what you're doing this morning. Reassure those children that, I know that they know this, but it probably helps them to hear, I'll give my life for you. I will make sure that door is shut. And I hear that in your voice, and I know most teachers are, but those two teachers who died, I am sure they were not cowering. I am sure
that's right.
They were trying to protect their babies. And, I mean, they're 7, 8, 9-year-old kids. I just can't absorb the evil mind.
No, it's unabsorbable. Absolutely. It's too much.
Right. Thank you, Tim. God bless. Randy. It was Tim. Dennis in Michigan. Go ahead, Dennis. Dennis, yeah, that phone. You got some feedback going there. Go ahead, friend.
Yes, Hugh. I just wanted to discuss the red flag laws that you claim to believe in so deeply. I guess my question is, criminals don't follow the law, so you're only going to infringe on my freedoms, I guess.
Dennis, you have no reason to be concerned. And I love talking to Second Amendment enthusiasts, but I want to assure you, a well-drawn, how old are you, number one?
57.
Have you ever been arrested?
No, sir.
Do you have any mental problems?
I do not.
Yeah, you're not going to, it's got nothing to do with you. A well-drawn severe threat order of protection law, such as Doug Ducey developed in Arizona and did not pass, targets specifically identified individuals who then have a court hearing, and their due process rights are protected. It's a very narrow thing, but that's not my number one priority. My number one priority is getting armed, trained professionals. There are 131,000 schools in America, K through 12. That's 262,000 trained professionals, and maybe you need more, but it's nothing compared to our federal budget and the crap we spend money on. Nothing.
Yes, sir. I agree with you on that point 100%. But I guess the real problem I have with it is if somebody has evil in their heart to do this, no law is going to stop them.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
You know what?
I live near Detroit, and I work with people.
Dennis, I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about violence. We can't stop violence.
No, I'm not either.
I'm talking about protecting schools. And this kid is so messed up. He should not have been able, he bought guns on his 18th birthday. He knew when he could go buy, and he's a complete killer. He's a sociopath.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, I
so
agree.
we can target, I mean, it's not that hard to draw. The trouble is, and I want, by the way, I don't want to be upset with gunmen. The trouble is, I saw rhetoric last night, Steve Kerr, I saw Chris Murphy. They're not talking about him. They're talking about you. And that's what makes the decision. That is what drives it right a stake through the heart of getting anything serious done. Because they are talking about you, and you are not a problem. You are a solution.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. Yep. But I guess my point is, let's say there was a red flag law and it stopped this individual from getting legally purchasing a gun. He would have gotten a gun because
I don't know, because
hold on, let me finish my point. Like I say, the people, coworkers that I have that live in the city of Detroit, they laugh and they say, "Do you think I need a piece of paper to get a gun?"
I know that, but
that's the reality of it.
Dennis, mentally disturbed people are easier to spot if they've tried to buy a weapon and they've been turned down. That's another, then the police go. And they begin to talk. They don't arrest them. They don't take them away. They begin to see what is wrong here. And a whole bunch happen after that happens. And somebody failed there. So we're not talking about violence in America and gun and Chicago shootings and Detroit being a war zone.
No.
We're not talking. I'm just talking about children in classrooms this morning. And if everybody in America who comments on this today stays focused on them, it'll be a productive conversation. Thank you, Dennis. Brad in Virginia, you have to be quick because I got less than a minute.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Pastor here in Winchester, Virginia. It's the absence of God that we're missing in this whole thing. And, I pastor here, and, the churches are actually just becoming a non-issue in our communities. And just wanted to say that, if we got back to our basic faith in God and, put him back where he needs to be, and everything, I think, would...
yeah, there's evil in the world. I'm listening to the Bible in a year, and last night Solomon has taken the throne and his brother's trying to kill him. So there's been evil in the world since Kings and Chronicles were written, Pastor, and now evil can be pretty heavily armed. Thank you, friend. Godspeed. Don't forget to take your relief factor today. On days like today, you forget. It's too early for me to take it in California. Take it when the show's over, unless I'm on California clock. I'm on the East Coast clock. I'm just out here for a few days. I'm going around the country for a bit. And ReliefFactor.com is a great sponsor. If you're watching, I got my microphone flag on here, right here. I'm turning it around. Kevin brought the microphone flag. Thank you, Kevin. Brought his Pittsburgh Steelers shirt. Not thank you, Kevin. But I got my ReliefFactor.com flag on my microphone, and I want to thank everyone for using it. That does. They're a great sponsor. I will take some more calls, maybe 4 more calls, 1-800-520-1234 after the break. No, actually, I'm done. I'll talk to Josh. I might get to Randy and Brody. I'll talk to Josh for 5 minutes and try and get the last 2 calls that we've screened. Stay tuned, America. On a very, very gloomy morning, I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. Joined by Hotline Josh Kraushaar of National Journal. Josh, very quickly, last night, Brian Kemp, Rasberger both win. The Texas congressional race is still too close to call. Am I right about that?
Yeah, it looks like Cuellar is with all the votes counted, has a very narrow lead, but still too close to call. And boy, it wasn't just the victory by both Kemp and Raffensperger, but the margins.
Yeah. And
75+% for Kemp and Raffensperger over a 50% majority.
And I'll come back to that, but I am talking about the horrific night in Texas, and that's what the audience wants to hear about. I don't think Steve Kerr helped anything last night. I don't think Chris Murphy helped anything last night because immediately people go to their corners when they feel like they're going to have their rights assaulted. I think we need to harden schools. I think we need to hire SROs. I think we got to pay for this because every 5 years is not good enough. Is there anyone who speaks sanely to that issue in the Congress that you cover?
Well, Hugh, first of all, it's almost it's stunning how quickly people point partisan fingers in the immediate aftermath of an awful, awful tragedy.
Yep.
It's just hard to watch the images, and it's gut wrenching. And I think we need some time to mourn and some time to think about what makes good policy instead of just pointing fingers and rushing to judgment. And it's gotten worse and worse there's been awful tragedies, school shootings over the last decade, but we don't seem to get smarter about coming up with policies that actually can fix the problem.
And I think the reason for that is immediately people go nuclear on their long-held positions as opposed to focusing on the specifics of the killer, and this guy is really nuts, and on the target being innocent children. And I can tell you, Columbine and Parkland, Newton, and now Rob are different from everything else.
Yeah, they are. They all demand different ways of looking at what would make good policy. David French had a good article that I read this morning about these red flag laws, where this guy clearly had made threats, clearly had issues, should not have been able to buy a gun at age 18, given his history, and yet was able to. And I think there's so many. I mean, not every case fits in this category, but there are so many of these awful cases where you have someone with clear warning signs that should not be able. Usually males between the ages of 18 and 22, and they shouldn't be able to buy a gun. And I think we should be looking at red flag laws and looking at laws in that narrow group of people.
And if you marry that with the spending clause to harden schools with SRO officers who are armed and the doors that we've been talking about with professionals this morning, I think it would pass. Josh, I got to take two more calls, but I want to ask you very quickly, how many ballots are outstanding if they count? And they will end up counting the date-stamped ballots because otherwise it's a violation of the Civil Rights Act. So if we count the date-stamped ballots, how many more ballots are outstanding in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it does depend on these court rulings. Not that many, about 1,000, I would say, but I don't want to put a firm number on it. I haven't followed the latest track. It's less than a 1,000 vote margin between David McCormick and Dr. Oz with a very narrow lead. But the recount is also going to be pretty significant because I still expect Oz to hold on to a very narrow lead after all the votes are counted. I don't know if there are enough votes left for that margin to be overturned, but it's such a narrow margin that I would expect the recount to add some twists and turns along the way.
Hotline Josh. Thank you, Josh Kraushaar. I want to talk to Randy in Texas. You got less than a minute, Randy.
Yes, good morning. Two things. Everything that's been said on your show is what kind of conversation that needs to be discussed on in the national level by the government, and I don't think it's going to happen, but the common sense things, the approach has been made on your show. And the other thing is last night the president invoked God's name 5 times. Sadly, he never did it on the area of peace and love. It was more of a wrathful thing using God's name. So those are my 2 comments, Hugh.
Thank you, Randy. And I noticed that, too. I wish the president prayed. He used it more as an invocation of wrath. Brody in Texas, you have the last call of the day, Brody.
Yes, sir. I'm a strong gun advocate. Been in Texas. I used to work in Uvalde. Been in the school system. I've got ARs, and I'm a strong gun advocate. But I agree with your approach. Put guns in good guys' hands and take them away from bad guys. I think there's a lot of retired military, a lot of retired police, Texas Rangers that would love nothing more than volunteer their time to come support and protect kids all across the nation. So while budget's tight for a lot of schools, I think there's a vast majority of people that are trained, highly trained people that would love to come and protect citizens and protect students without the cost that it may bring.
Oh, Brody, I'm not opposed to that. I make it very, very stringent because you would unsettle parents if people were just off the street, but you could assure them, and it would keep costs down. But we can afford it if we need to, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, there's so much wasteful spending. I think it's a very easy sell for the people of America to put that in the budget, protect our kids. Most of these people that attack schools are cowards, and when they're approached with somebody with a gun, they typically end their own lives. So I think that's a huge deterrent when they know that school districts are protected by trained
professionals. Brody, thank you. God bless you. Thank you. A Second Amendment enthusiast, because that's the way to advance the conversation. Not with Steve Kerr. I understand his father was murdered, so I give him a lot of grace there. But look, don't go to your corners. Go to your knees and then go to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about, and come back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone in L.A. who's helping me out today. I appreciate it.